Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the partner call. Hey, Shiva, how are you?
Very good, Andrew.
Are you back home or are you still abroad?
I'm still abroad.
How's everything going?
So far, so good, Andrew.
Good. Everybody, if you're new to the partner call, welcome. We give it till 3 past to get started. And in the meantime, I'm going to post in chat. If you hadn't heard about it or didn't have time to attend, that is the URL to the vulnerability management best practice session we did with Dennis Hausnick, who is a regular on the partner call, and they are an MSSP called WATSEC. They focus solely on vulnerability management. Dennis has been in the space for 20 plus years, and Carl Bickmore of SnapTech, who shared more on the packaging and pricing side and go-to-market side. Dennis shared more the technical side. We had close to 400 people register and about 300 attend so far. So if you have some time, I think it was, well worthwhile. I think I see Adam from the UK. Adam, you were on that, weren't you? Adam, you there?
Yeah, hi Andrew. Yes, I was on that session. Very good.
Was it worthwhile for you?
Yeah. I mean, obviously I've been a long time partner, but you can always pick up some new things, can't you? So no, it's good.
Awesome. Glad to hear. Glad to hear it. Okay. Looks cool. We got some new names here, so excited to get going. Will, how are you? Will Heflin, good to see you. Larry Gray, Chris Sears, James. A lot of familiar faces. Eric Hansen, good to see you, my friend.
Well, you've been taking my money for how many years now?
Not enough. Not enough.
Good answer. Good answer.
Thanks for joining us, Eric. Okay, we'll give it probably less than a minute now at 3 past, and we'll get started.
I see Rick Monning just got on there.
Oh, wow. Hey, Rick. Good to see you.
How's it going? What's up, Eric?
All right. Okay, so let's get started. My name is Andrew Morgan. I have been helping the CyberCNS team, Shiv, I think before we had code. So a number of years. And in April of 2020, we started the partner call. So we're coming up, Shiva, next month on 2 years of the partner call. So we started this right after the pandemic, and we had alpha code. We had about 50 MSP and MSSPs join the journey. We went commercial mid-November of 2020. And I think, Shiva, what did we cross over about 600 partners this month, give or take, now on CyberCNS?
Yes, Andrew.
That's all fantastic. Congrats. So you guys are part of the reason for the success of the and this call. And so let me just kind of frame out what we've done and what the call is about. So Shiva will give an update on, what's new, what's been released, feedback on, for example, some of the new features. Obviously, we've released patch management. I'm sure people have questions on that. And then from there, I'll be watching chat. I'll go off mic and off screen, but I'll keep an eye on chat. I'll interrupt Shiva at appropriate points for questions. We'll make sure all the questions are answered, and then we'll open it up for just some general Q&A as well. So with that, Shiva, let you share your screen and take over, and I'll keep an eye out for chat. Adam, assume the lightweight agent needs to be deployed on endpoints for patch management, Shiva.
Yes, that is the case for at least the initial release. And then we are looking at basically introducing it for the probe also, but does it have the capability? It does have the capability, but we just suppressed it because of various reasons, right? So if the patch fails, etc. So we just wanted to make sure that
Shiva, can I ask a silly question?
Yep.
It probably is silly because I don't know, all of Chocolate's features, but like a firmware update or some type of, infrastructure update to someone's got a FortiGate and there's a vulnerability. Do you foresee the pro being able to push that update? Or is that out of bounds of the patching?
No, the primary intention of patching is to do what RMMs can't do today, right? So we've started with third-party patching. The second part of the patching that we are working on, which is basically like a small dedicated team that's right now working on it, is basically a patch management for any of the networking devices, which is like Cisco, your Fortinets, your Sophos, etc. Which right now, most of it is manual. Basically being able to do that through those mechanisms is basically what we basically propose to do. So we basically are not going to touch the things that are being done by RMMs today, which is your Windows patches and all of those. We're just going to keep them by the side. But everything that Windows is not doing, like our existing RMMs don't do or don't do very well, we basically are focusing on those areas so that it becomes a complementary solution and it doesn't become like a competing solution with any RMM that's out there.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Fair. I agree. I Graham, well said. Okay, Shiva, let you share your screen and take it.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. So, as usual, thanks everyone. Basically, as Andrew said, it's like great to have all of you here, and basically we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary, so that basically feels special. What did we release this week? Basically, actually, we released on an urgent basis an agent with some of you had reported that agents were basically going online without reason, etc. We actually were able to kind of look at some of the logs that were provided by Ian from Navitent and basically kind of fix that up. And basically we also did a code review and found a couple of other cases where this could potentially happen. So a new agent with those fixes actually went in. Along with that, basically one of the newer features that essentially came up this week was essentially Nmap released a new version of their executable. And as you know, we are basically on the commercial version of Nmap. So we essentially got the new version, and the new version basically does a little bit of a better port scan, basically using the npcap library. So you will actually see the npcap basically getting installed on machines and basically it doing scans from those npcap machines. The second thing that npcap actually helps us is also to basically fetch the MAC addresses of all the local devices that are in there, and basically being able to kind of give you more accurate information about those particular devices. So those were essentially changes that were pushed in, and basically they got deployed to your network. We've actually made quite a few changes in the agent so that it is ready to migrate to the new infrastructure that we've already created. And I'll talk about what changes we made for the new infrastructure so we basically can get this. And we had to make a lot of those changes to make sure that when the migration actually happens, it is smooth, and basically we kind of don't create problems for any of you in terms of continuity of the service itself. there are a couple of activities that we are actually going through right now. So I just wanted to be very open in terms of full transparency. So in terms of, like, for example, as I explained the last week partners call, we had basically the whole thing about our certificate being revoked and then Sectigo then reissuing the certificate, that entire thing. But then we basically had a whole bunch of partners explain that they're concerned about it through various channels, etc. And then we essentially went back to Deloitte, looked at various items, and then essentially we've kind of done multiple things. One is basically last week we had an IBM team which essentially did an architecture walkthrough and deployment review. So they actually looked at how we've deployed things and basically what is the security posture and all of those pieces. And they've given us the green signal in terms of saying that they find our architecture to be clean and basically the deployment to be hands-free. So essentially that was basically done last week. We've basically got Palo Alto, who's basically doing a complete secure code review. So they are actually, they have access to the repositories and they are basically doing a secure code review. And they've basically found a few minor findings, but no major findings as of now. But this exercise is supposed to be completed by end of this week, right? Third, we are basically adding SonarQube into which is one of the recommendations of the IBM team. So we basically have SonarQube, which is being added into the CI/CD pipeline to make sure that any code that will actually go out of the repository will basically always be flagged. And if there are any things which are flagged by SonarQube, the deployment will completely stop. So essentially that is being done right now. And then one of the things that was also told by the folks is, in order to improve the transparency, one of the things that we'll be doing is that for every build that we basically publish release notes, we'll also publish the SonarQube report, so that you are completely, like, when somebody asks you a question saying that, are you sure about whether this vendor is providing this data, etc., then you can essentially, you have all the data in front of you. And I'm open to this team telling me what else you need in order to basically feel that we are doing the right thing and we are keeping you secure. Because the whole concept is that, as you understand with security, there are two ways to deal with it, right? So one is basically there's a whole bunch of people who basically go with all shock and awe. They will basically we can create FUD about anything that is out there. But what we want to essentially do is to give you enough of ammunition so that you feel secure and you also are able to explain to others that what we are providing you is basically secure. And then we are working on a whole bunch of features, and I'll talk to you about some of these things as we basically start the new deployment. We will basically be starting the migration of domains into the new infrastructure. So starting early next week, and we will essentially kind of be moving it. One of the change is basically that the login page will change to portal.cybercns.com. So there will be a common login page, and then you log in and then it goes into your specific instance. Again, I basically am personally not very thrilled about this particular move, but the problem is that this unfortunately seems to be the theme that everybody wants to talk about from a security perspective. In fact, last week, a whole bunch of people came back to us and said we had subdomains, and each of those subdomains basically has the partners' names in it. So essentially, I can look up the certificates and figure out who are the customers. Now, while I can look at anything as a vulnerability, these are basically things which are available in a lot of domains. And if you basically go to an IT Nation event, you basically can get the list of partners and their domains in no time, right? So unfortunately, we are attaching too much of importance to a lot of these pieces. So we are having to make changes to basically accommodate these thought processes. And I'm just being very candid with all of you because I think of you as basically being part of this family. So we are expressing our opinions, and you can tell me that I'm wrong in certain things, and I'm absolutely open to that. So we've essentially changed this. The reason I don't like the portal.cybercns.com idea is that then everybody gets the common page, and it is something that you cannot customize. You cannot make it your own. And what we would like to do is to have each of you in your own subdomain with your own certificate, so that it looks your own and looks the piece that you have. So anyway, with this, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to start with partners with the largest amount of data, and then start moving the partners with the lesser data. So we have 5 regions that are deployed already. So we will be maintaining the data residency requirements that are needed for the different regions. Our UI is completely delivered through AWS CloudFront with a firewall in front of it. So once we finish migrating your system, you will receive an email. So please, my only request is please help us by completing the verification, because that will help us kind of then say that, okay, your instance is migrated and we can switch off the current instance. V1, we want to basically officially migrate it to a UL status. So if anyone still wants to keep V1, please let me know. But otherwise, our proposal is to just phase it out and shut down those instances. Post this, we basically already have a backlog of 260 features that we will be basically kind of buttoning ourselves down and basically releasing them with the team that we have. So that's essentially the focus that we are essentially looking at. But I understand that basically while we are doing this in 2 weeks, and if nothing new comes out, it basically is a problem. So one of the things is that, as I said, we made one release last week. This end of this week and early next week, we'll make a release, which will basically have the new compliance reports, which is Cyber Essentials Plus, the Australian Essential 8, and the CIS IG-based reports and compliance. These will essentially be kind of released early next week. So while even before we do the migration, you will actually see these reports in your instances, and they will essentially be live in your system. Okay. So the other thing which I wanted to essentially share is basically from a company perspective, what are we doing? So as you know, a whole bunch of you basically got the stock options, and then I know there'll be questions on why it's not being returned, but we are essentially have given it to our legal. They've signed it and we countersigned it, and they will all be dispatched on Saturday, 5th March. That essentially is the date. Also wanted to inform everybody on the team that we're very close to getting a strategic investor on board. We are currently under NDA with the new structure in order to scale the company. And one of the goals of this entire exercise of getting the strategic investor is, and that we are discussing with them, is to be able to provide an enhanced security platform with the same cost, but with a better experience. So that essentially is the underlying thing. So we've had a lot of people who came in, but we wanted to essentially keep this vision and keep this goal in mind before we essentially got on anybody else onto this thing, because I believe that we have a commitment to all of you in terms of you helped build this platform. It was not something that we built on our own. And so we want to basically make sure that this commitment is met, and we basically are providing this piece of this thing. Just quickly, I want to essentially go over the architecture, the final deployed architecture, which was basically approved, so that everybody is quickly aware of it, and then we can essentially kind of go into the questions. So this was basically kind of the architecture. If you really look at it, basically with the new architecture, you're coming into the cloud CDN, you're basically coming into Amazon. And then we basically have the shared network firewall. This is our CDN. And then we have the per tenant front-end web workers, which are basically isolated, and per tenant authentication and authorization containers. So these two are isolated. And then we have a set of containers which are basically only for backend reporting and scheduling. So all of this is basically coming into the OpenSearch basically clusters, which we have deployed. And these OpenSearch clusters essentially have basically tenancy. So we have incorporated multiple tenants. And then we have essentially kind of based on the size of data that you have, we essentially move you to different clusters. So the information about which cluster to connect, etc., is basically stored in a key vault, which is basically pulled off by these workers when they basically execute the request. So all of these things that you see with tick marks already deployed and already done. And then the only change that we essentially have had to make, basically as we scale tested data, is that earlier we basically were going to use the Amazon SQS service in order to basically kind of get data back from the lightweight agent and external scan agents, etc. But what we essentially found was that this was essentially kind of very slow, and it was not basically meeting the performance requirements that we required. So we have actually kind of migrated to Google PubSub, and Google PubSub will basically give the complete scalability that is required and the speed and agility for us to basically kind of send messages to the agents as well as basically receive messages from the agents. So this essentially is the only change primarily from the architecture, but otherwise the entire architecture has been kept intact. And as I said, we've reviewed this with multiple partners, which includes IBM and Palo Alto, and they've all basically kind of gone through it at a code level, and they find it to be perfect. So we've essentially kind of deployed this, and now we're going to start migrating you over. So the way it works is that we first basically snapshot your data when you're basically not using the system. Pull that snapshot. We basically, during the snapshot, we will essentially kind of look at if any schedules are there. If no schedules are there, we actually shut down the connectivity to the agents. We basically take a snapshot of your cluster, move the data over to this centralized cluster with your domain information, etc. And then basically we create a tenant for you in this OpenSearch cluster, provision you in basically the CDN and basically in the firewall. And then the moment we do that, then we basically kind of change basically reroute the agents to basically come and hit this particular location. So this is basically the sequence that is being followed. So once we do this, we basically kind of compare. We have a script that compares what's in your existing agent list versus what's in the new agent list. And we basically kind of have a script that checks whether everything is okay. And if everything is okay, then it basically shoots out a mail to you saying that please verify that everything is okay. We will keep your instance alive for 3 days after we send you that mail. And after that, what we do is we take a snapshot of your system and keep it, but basically switch off the machine. In case basically if there's a problem and you need to reinstantiate your machine, it is not a problem. We can still do it basically for at least 2 to 3 weeks after that particular day. So that is essentially the process that we're going to go through. If anything, please let me know. We can basically modify this process if required, but this is what this team is going to be doing for the next couple of months.
So Shiva, Harendale came in late. This is specific to the web SaaS or the SaaS cloud version versus on-prem. Is that correct?
Correct. So this is basically all going to happen for the people who are on SaaS. The on-prem, basically their systems will automatically get upgraded to a container-based architecture. So the same thing that we're deploying on the cloud, we're basically bringing it back into the system. The only difference is that basically here we have the web server from Nginx. We have migrated to a Caddy. But apart from that, we basically have everything is be the same. The only thing that we'll have to do is that in on-prem, you will have to basically allow outbound traffic to the Google PubSub, which we will basically provide whitelisting instructions for, so that we can essentially kind of the agents can publish the messages, and the workers in the machine can basically receive those messages. That's the only difference that's going to happen.
Got it. Awesome. Okay, you guys want to let some questions fire on in here? Adam asks, will the domain change for on-prem as well, Shiva?
No, the domain change, there will be no domain change for on-prem because they own the machine, so there is no problem. The only domain change that happens is for people who are on SaaS.
Yeah, got it. Okay. What else do you guys have? Paul asks, hey, Paul, any plans to add CMMC in the compliance list? So right now, obviously, there's 800.171 in there. I guess, Paul, my question to you back is, now that we've gone to 3 levels of CMMC and 800.171 pretty much meets old level 3, which is now level 2, do you have any clients that need CMMC level 3? And, so that's on.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we have a prospect that's very specific to CMMC and just wanted to try to set some expectations around there. I know it's kind of early on. They just keep drilling into CMMC specifically. And I think they're just want to check a box. I wasn't sure if, I know like on the compliance reports, there's a lot that are worded to the other compliances, and this one in specific is very drawn to CMMC.
So
yeah,
the only question I had was CMMC is basically has a lot more about process and all of those pieces, right? So we may be able to check a few boxes on the entire CMMC itself. I don't know if Carl is there, but maybe if somebody can help us basically kind of navigate, because as we go into CMMC, we see it's like 20 sheets of different types of compliances. We do not know how exactly, like a lot of things we can map into the compliance sheet itself. But otherwise, basically, see, we have the technology to be able to kind of create these reports, etc. So the only thing is that how do we essentially map some of the data that is required over there, because a lot of the data in CMMC seems to be something that we cannot map automatically from the system itself. So
yeah. No, Shiva, that's really, really well said. Yeah, Paul, again, and again, and Tim, no, Tim, you're welcome to come on. You know this really well. You know, but I you know, I don't understand, you know, like as you know, with 800/171 now being what the majority of people need from a controls perspective outside of process, you know, what are they looking for? And Tim, you want to come on and give your any thought on that?
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. Tim Golden,
Yeah.
Compliance Risk IO. So we're talking 171, we're talking CMMC, you know, any of these risk management compliance frameworks. I see it as sort of, well, many buckets, but two buckets. How it specifically relates to CyberCNS is around hardening, vulnerability management, configuration settings, you know, the things that CyberCNS can quote unquote see on an endpoint or see in the platform, which is completely different than the policies, procedures, documentation, the sort of second bucket of a compliance framework. One of them is, what are you doing in the environment, and the things that CyberCNS can pull from. The other side of that risk management bucket is policies, procedures, documentation, and blah, 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 things that are outside the scope of CyberCNS. It's sort of the easiest way to explain it, right? There is, yeah, so Eric,
No,
just rename 171 to CMMC L2.
Right, yeah, that's everything makes sense to what you're saying. So yeah, I'm on the same page. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Tim, thank you for the explanation. By the way, are you at CS2 in a few weeks in Tampa?
I haven't booked a trip and left my freaking office in 3 years. So
Okay. No worries.
I did have a question about compliance, since we're on that subject.
Before you go, I just want to make sure. So Paul, is that making sense to you all? And Tim, thanks for the explanation, because that's really,
It does.
We're only as good as the controls we can automate in this, and we're not going to be in the foreseeable future a GRC platform, whereas as Tim eloquently laid out around policy and procedure and process. Right. So that you know, I just don't want to give a misnomer that hey, this vulnerability scanner, although can do a lot around configuration and compliance checking, is your quote unquote answer for meeting your CMMC audit. So does that make sense?
It does. Yep. It does make sense. I definitely appreciate the color commentary around it too.
Yeah, of course. That's why this call is so awesome. Tim, what's your question?
I would agree.
Specifically compliance in 853. Are you in alignment with Rev 5? That's my first question. Or are you still utilizing Rev 4?
We are actually on Rev 3. We have to
Okay, what can I do to help get you to Rev 5 would be a different conversation outside of the scope of today's call. Because
Tim, here's my question back to you. Like, outside of maybe, like, who's dealing with federal contractors? I mean, you know, like, or the federal government rather, that needs 53. Or
so, go ahead. Yeah, I'll let others chime in.
I'd love to know what MSPs, not to be a wise guy to you, like what MSPs are dealing with customers that need 53.
Well, I'll let others chime in before I chime in.
Is anybody? Yes, no, chat? I'd like to see one, yes. But let's hear you. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so 853, when we look at a compliance framework, vast majority of the compliance frameworks that are out there, and CMMC 171 is a perfect example, is a derivative of 853, right?
Great,
If you
all
look
of
at
them.
all of them are a derivative of 853. Now,
Correct.
seeing what's happening in the regulation and compliance space and going forward from, from a sort of government, state, federal, and local, blah, 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 up and down the chain, like they standardize on 853. Seeing what's happening across the supply chain, I'm not talking defense, I'm talking supply chain as a whole, regardless of whether it's Raytheon down to the lug nut maker or whatever, the feds, both state and local, are going to start pushing a standardized framework. Now, there's a little battle between CIS and 853 on which one's going to come on top. But regardless, one of these two frameworks will end up being the quote national framework over the course of the next 3 to 5 years that everybody's going to have to standardize on. So you look at CMMC, it's a derivative of 853. 853 has control tailoring. They tailored the controls, called it 171, i.e. CMMC.
Yeah.
So, when you go ahead.
No, it's a fair statement. Can we take that one offline just because, here's my wise guy statement of the day to you, Tim. Like, knowing that CIS is the home of the multi-state ISAC, I think CIS controls wins this. But again, we'll see what happens. That's
it's a battle. It's a battle, and we've been having that conversation on Facebook everywhere for a long time. And there's an organization called StateRAMP that will be based on 853 and FedRAMP that will be pushed to businesses at some point in the next 3 or 4 years.
Fair.
Or less.
Okay, cool.
So
yeah,
I digress.
Yeah. I agree with you, Arnie. Absolutely, they will adopt. Okay, so Will, was patching covered? I came in late, and what OSs are covered? Shiva, can you want to just review, like, maybe just again, so when you opt in for patch management, what are you really opting in for in terms of the ability to patch X, Y, and Z in version 1?
Yeah, so in version 1, what we've released is basically what we're calling as a beta release, which essentially covers, as I said, patching for third-party applications, because that's where we essentially see the gap. We don't see the gap in basically the Windows patching, etc., which RMMs already have. What we are basically already covering is basically Windows, which is through Chocolatey. We have the ability to patch on Linux and the ability to patch on Mac. Now, those two basically will be enabling, along with the release that we're making shortly, the Mac and the Linux pieces. But Windows is ready and live, and you can basically use it to patch almost like 35 different applications that we've already tested. And I will basically be publishing on the website basically new applications as we finish testing them and basically approve them. You can basically start using those applications for patching.
Very cool. Will, does that answer your question? Okay, awesome. Okay, man, it's the bottom of the hour. We always get some questions here. What else is going on? Dennis, I saw you out there. Thank you once again for doing an awesome webinar. By the way, for those of you that came in late, all the way at the top, and I'll put it in again here, Dennis and Carl did a phenomenal job on vulnerability management webinar. I'll put the URL in again. But Dennis, what's new in your world? Anything you'd like to share?
I have a quick question. It's a
Yeah,
little out of the scope. We had a client that was having problems because we were scanning across a firewall to multiple locations. If I put in an exclusion for a subnet, will that also exclude it from the Active Directory scanning? I want to make sure that if I put something in as an exclusion, it's not going to ever get scanned at all because they're having troubles with this hammering the firewall when it was scanning across the VPN.
So Dennis, the exclusion is basically global. We don't have a specific exclusion saying that this is for this specific kind of a scan or not for this particular kind of a scan. But if that is required, then we can basically make it a tag-based scan. So we can essentially say that for this kind of subnet tags, don't do this specific scan. We can just give you a mechanism by which you can take a particular exclusion and say it applies to a certain specific scan. Would that solve that problem for you?
Well, actually, no. Actually, what I need is for it to be global. I would need to be. If I say do not scan this subnet, nothing scans it. None of the scans will touch that subnet. That's what I need, because then they're going to be put sensors on the other subnet. So there'll be multiple probes without overlapping. I just want to make sure that we don't do any scans across the VPN, because that was causing them some problems. So global is perfect.
Yeah, it's global right now.
Awesome. Okay, Tim, you want to come on and ask about Linux patching, my friend?
Yeah, I'm just curious if you're, how you're doing the Linux patching, if it's, with package managers, or you're patching third-party installed things as well through either the Snap with Snapd or Flatpaks.
We are using Snap, Tim, and basically the combination of Snap as well as basically the local package managers on Linux. So Yum and basically apt. So these are basically the package managers that we're using. So we will be supporting the most common operating systems, which is basically CentOS, Fedora, Ubuntu, and like a little bit of Debian, and basically, of course, Red Hat. So these are essentially kind of the OSs we're supporting. And basically, from an applications perspective, we're focusing on more on the Linux realm. We are focusing more on the backend applications that people tend to install, basically typically Java and other server-based applications that people would install, which basically requires updates. That's essentially where we are basically focusing on.
Okay. Also curious, have you looked into vulnerability management on containers that may be running on the Linux systems?
Yes, Tim. It's something that we've been kind of itching to get started on, because we have actually experimented with it, but just that I didn't know how many folks would really have containers deployed in order to basically be able to use it. And then I didn't want to get it to get branded something like it's an enterprise feature and we don't need it. So if
yeah, I'd say probably not a whole lot. I mean, it's probably start to show up before too much longer. But yeah, I think right now it's a low demand priority.
Yeah, but we have it. We can add it as a tab over there. But what I'm focusing heavily on, Tim, basically as one of the features which I want to talk to everyone about is we are now basically getting a complete Office 365 Azure pack ready, which basically gives you complete details of what's in your Azure, what's in your this pack. And I can actually show you some of the recommendations that basically come out of the security. Just give me a second, because I actually did this in order to basically test with a certain set of folks. So I've just got a few reports. So I'm just going to this thing. So. We have a set of reports that we basically just kind of pulled out today. So this is an example of a report about what are the different VMs, what are the environments, and all of those pieces. And then basically a whole bunch of security recommendations that we can essentially bring out, which talks about like how exactly in your Azure cloud, what should you be doing in order to basically kind of secure your different resources. So we've been able to kind of create this kind of thing. And as you can see, this we basically kind of quickly created in Power BI. And then we basically also looked at category of cost, like how can you save cost? We can essentially bring back data about different rules which can essentially help you to save cost. So we can basically bring you all these recommendations from there. And again, these are basically kind of what is the cost breakdown of different services that you're using in Azure and Office 365. So these are some reports that we're essentially kind of bringing together and pulling together so that we can essentially kind of create what is called, what we're trying to call as a cloud pack, and basically provide that complete information, because right now, whatever we're providing you with is limited information, but it's not covering the complete cloud. What we want to be able to do is to provide, as part of this product, that complete cloud visibility, so that you have one place where you can look at whether it's on-prem assets, cloud, everything in one place and not go out anywhere. So just let me know if this will be useful. If it will be, then we will essentially kind of start rolling that out very quickly.
Updated security viewer system. So ZB, you can come on. Shiva, did you possibly come on a little bit late, ZB? Shiva had a slide about what they're doing with both Deloitte, IBM, etc. Were you on for that?
Yeah, I had a conflict of meetings, so I started late. So.
Well, you get no dessert, okay?
It sounds like it.
Shiva, do you have that one slide handy to maybe just share with ZB on what the...
And if you want to send it to me, so I don't tie up everybody else's time, that's fine too.
No, it shouldn't take too long, ZB. I think it's an important slide, and it'll just take a second for Shiva to just kind of go over where we are with audits and third-party security.
Yeah. So as you can see, basically we pulled together an IBM team which has done an architecture walkthrough and a deployment review. And this, as I said, was basically based on some of the feedback we got last week, etc. We also have a Palo Alto who basically did a complete secure code review of our source code. And what we are also doing right now is essentially putting Sonar Cube as part of the CI/CD pipeline based on the review comments that IBM had given us, for making sure that any code which is found to be insecure, the deployment will essentially stop at that point of time. So it will not allow any insecure code to go out. And as I always said, we will also be making Sonar Cube reports of every release available to all of you, so that everybody gets confidence that what code was deployed in their instance was basically of the highest quality and basically passed all the tests that we could basically do at this point of time. And we are basically working on features, and we will start deployment. And once we move to the new infrastructure, basically you have a whole bunch of new security controls also that basically come into place with that infrastructure. And I was basically just explaining also in terms of the architecture. If you look at the architecture, basically right now we basically have all the VMs and basically individual VMs and basically a local firewall. But now with the new architecture, you basically get the Amazon firewall, which is completely configured. And then you have isolated tenancy requirements basically that are basically met. Plus you have a complete OpenSearch cluster, which allows us to kind of maintain the security centralized instead of basically being distributed. We are basically then using Amazon, we were using Amazon Simple Queue service, but because of the extreme latency of SQS, we essentially moved to Google PubSub because it makes it easier for us to kind of push data in and out of the systems. And so that again is basically a fully secured endpoint that we essentially have. So these are essentially kind of the, we've basically kind of gone through multiple reviews, A with Deloitte, B with IBM, C with Palo Alto. And as part of all of this, we essentially have been able to kind of go through these multiple cycles, secure all of the things that we basically found. And we basically kind of putting together this architecture that you're seeing today.
Cool, thanks for that. And as far as any audits or pen tests against your systems that y'all have done?
Yes, so both IBM and Palo Alto basically did the pen test. They ran vulnerability assessments on our code, all of those pieces together.
Okay, and is that information that you're going to release as far as results and planned remediations?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Do you have a timeline on that?
So we are basically we're going to move to this infrastructure in 2 weeks, and as part of that release, we will be releasing the initial reports to each one of you.
Okay, Awesome.
Good questions, EB. Okay, so Paul says, is it possible to add, hold on. Would it be possible to add a report that displays server file shares with assigned permissions? Why would that be important, Paul? Paul, Shiva, any thoughts on that?
We are basically adding that, Paul. In fact, Dennis said yesterday, had some message about local users with administrative permissions, plus basically all the shares with assigned permissions. This is essentially a combined report that we are creating. So this will essentially be released shortly.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna, you were just mentioning why we might want to
I was
have this
kidding.
information.
I was.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, all right.
All right. So, Mark, I missed the beginning, but is true vulnerability scanning of external IPs coming? Just doing a port scan? When you say true vulnerability scanning, Mark, can you define what you mean by what is true vulnerability scanning?
Well, just like right now, the external scanning literally is showing open ports and what your SSL settings are. If you're running a website, it's not actually telling you if there's a vulnerability in the site itself. You know, are you running bad PHP? Are you running, you know, a bad WordPress, yada, yada, yada. It's just literally an open port scan and a SSL check.
Mm-hmm.
So Mark, let us know where you're seeing this, because this was upgraded almost 6 weeks ago. And then since then, we've been seeing basically issues of bad PHP, Apache misconfigurations, all of that come through in external scans. If you're not seeing it, please let us know for which host you're not seeing it. We'll basically kind of look at it and fix it up, because we are actually seeing this.
Okay, I'll take a look. Maybe I just haven't looked. Just glossed over it.
SOC 3 report, Shiva. Any plans there? I know we're working on SOC 2 compliance.
We are working on SOC 2 compliance. Basically, SOC 3 is not right now. So, as I said, once we basically have a little bit of cycles left after we basically get into the next mode, we will be able to kind of get to SOC 2, SOC 3, whatever we need to get to.
Sure. Any chance we'll see Untangled integration anytime soon, Shiva?
Untangled, basically, we've already finished the code. And as I said, it's basically part of that feature list that we already have developed. And basically, we have to just push out. We're just holding off on those features just to basically make sure that we do this migration. Once we do the migration, in the first 2 weeks, we'll actually see a whole bunch of features, and Untangled is part of that. pfSense is also a part of that. All of those integrations are ready. It is just that we have to release it once that goes in.
Okay, Adam asks, will Google pub/sub service help agent traffic to self-hosted servers when running a large amount of scans?
It will basically reduce the amount of agent traffic, yes, because in fact, you will actually see reduced agent traffic in the current release itself, because we've applied kind of a huge compression. So you should actually see right now itself basically almost 44 to 45% in terms of savings in terms of the amount of data that is being sent. And we are basically working to reduce that further. But yes, basically Google PubSub will not exactly reduce it, because you're publishing to an external source and you're basically receiving it back at the server and pulling back the data. So you're not going to really save a lot of traffic, but it is just that we are doing other things to essentially reduce the traffic.
Cool. Chris is asking about MPCAP, Shiva, in the conversation earlier. What is MPCAP used for at the agent level? I have a few customers that have noticed the install and wanted more details about it. I know MPCAP is, I know what it is, but what's being collected?
MPCAP primarily is basically being used to collect data about MAC addresses on the network. Beyond that, right now, we are not using it for any other purpose at this particular point of time. Okay, and in the long term, one of the plans is to basically be able to do silent monitoring of traffic and basically being able to push out anomalies into the central server. But that is not being done right now. But that is something that we will discuss in a future call and then get permission from all of you and then look at the feedback, and based on that we can put this in. But it is basically a foundation for basically getting there eventually.
All right. Sure, we're at that bewitching hour, 11 minutes left. I'll say, hey, we'll wrap it up early and then we'll get 14 more messages. Do you have anything, Shiva, that you haven't shared that you'd like to?
And I just wanted to say that we're just basically going into this migration. So I just wish us all the best, and we'll basically migrate you over. And when we basically send you over to the request to basically verify it, please verify it, because we just want to make sure that things are basically in order when you basically log into the system on the subsequent days. So
yeah, Shiva, look, my personal opinion is my hat's off to you. I know, we always trade off functionality for security, but I think going to the common URL, I get the nice to have, but I think these days you have to go with security over or naming conventions that don't give us that anymore. So I know it's not what you prefer, but my hat's off to you for doing it. Okay, Dennis, is NPCap installed with the lightweight agent or just the probe?
it's just the probe.
Okay, Rich C, can you migrate an on-prem system to SaaS? Yes, you can, Rich. The question is, do you have data you want to come over, or do you just want to do fresh install? You don't have to put all that out here, but all you need to do is email support at CyberCNS, share your domain. They'll decommission your license, and then they'll ask you to do some things on your side to make sure that your on-prem server is decommissioned. And then they'll spin up a SaaS, and then they're going to ask you about what data you want to come over and or not. ZB, is there an email list we can sign up for future releases where we were not aware? So basically like a roadmap that's already out there, ZB?
Yeah, we didn't know the changes coming with the NPCap, like Chris mentioned earlier, and that fired some alerts for us and a lot of concerns from engineers and customers that started seeing that. Because as Chris mentioned in the follow-up comment, we're seeing it not just on the probes.
Yeah.
Right. Not just on the probes. We're also seeing it on the lightweight agents.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So Shiva, maybe especially with whether it's EDRs or SIM, SOC SIMs that are going to flag new whether it's code, whether it's executable, whatever it is. Any thoughts on how we can get ahead of that this is coming? Any thoughts?
So I think what we will basically do is that before we make a release, we will actually kind of, if anybody has basically a ticket-based integration, we'll create a notifications where basically we can push these notifications into your ticket boards. And second is that in the product itself, we'll essentially kind of put up a notification 48 hours in advance, which will essentially kind of say that these are the features which are coming, and basically you may need to do these things in case this is coming. So that way you are prepared for it. So we'll do these two changes and basically get it out into this release.
Cool.
Okay, that'll be good. As far as like big changes like that, those are the ones we definitely want to be aware of, because if it's just a minor update to the agent, okay, whatever, no big deal. But this was pretty significant, and it did cause a lot of commotion for us.
Right. Garrett, patch management will be an additional fee. We haven't determined that yet. I would, if I'm a betting person, yes, eventually we will have to. Right now it's in beta. We got to figure out the ticket load, what it is going to look like. So no additional fee has been determined at this time. But we will certainly keep you guys apprised and certainly talk through it with you guys. As you know, we are transparent about everything. So I hope that makes sense. Dennis, is it needed? So is what needed for lightweight agent?
I will check why we basically put it for LWAs. My suspicion is that because we were using some features of Nmap to basically figure out like what ports are open, etc. Otherwise, we won't give that information. So if it's possible to remove it, we'll remove it for the lightweight agents. I will just check on it and basically revert to both you and Chris shortly.
Yeah, I would expect to see it on the probe, but not on the lightweight agents. I think that is going to cause some concern if you start seeing PCAP installed on every Windows device.
Yep.
Sure. I will basically get that checked out and basically I'll revert back to both you and Chris shortly.
All right.
Will y'all publish that once you determine that, or you'll provide some notification?
Yes.
Rich C, is their call and go-to-market strategy? Rich, there was in fact, the webinar we did with Carl and Dennis, we talked a lot about go-to-market strategy. We'll do more of those. I'll put the URL in again. Did you see that webinar? It's I just put the URL in again. Okay. Perfect. All right, Shiva, 5 minutes left. What are your thoughts with all the work you got going on, Shiva? Do you want to do a call next week and give an update, or do you want to take a week and come back in 2? You tell, what are your thoughts just based on the migration and everything you guys are going to have going?
I'll send an email update next week, Andrew, because I think the team is going to be busy doing the migrations next week. And what we'll do is we'll come back on the 16th with basically new updates, and we'll basically kind of then also have the feature list that we can go through. So
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right. So everybody, we'll make sure you get an email. We'll remind everybody that we won't have a partner call next week, but Shiva will give an update status. Until then, yeah, I agree. And as always, to the team that you have there, Shiva, and the hard work. Appreciate everything. Appreciate all you coming on the call today. I think we're up to like close to 90 at the peak, and wishing everybody an awesome week. We'll look forward to seeing everybody back in 2 weeks, Shiva.
thanks everyone. And as I said, we basically are really indebted to all of you in order that you provide us with the feedback, and please keep it coming. And as I said, we may make mistakes, but we are basically quick to correct them. So ZB, I think one of the things I just want to let you know is that you will be the first guys who will basically get migrated to new infrastructure. So early next week, ZB and Chris expect that we'll be reaching out to you because you're the first one.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, we definitely would like to have some good information on when that's happening, because that'll be I want it to be a smooth transition. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, ZB. All right, guys. Have an awesome week. Take care, everyone. Cheers.